Iran has never really been a global country out of the economic aspect, although it can be said that, even though globalization has benefited Iran's economic growth, it has transformed Iran into a rentier country and has created conflicts within their traditions and religion. In 1979, Iran made a decision to nationalize their oil exports, which meant that they decided to start signing oil agreements with foreign countries, which they had not done up until now. This can be considered as the time at which Iran decided to become a part of globalization. That same year, Iran started exporting oil to Africa, Asia, and Europe, therefore continuing to make the majority of their profits from trade. A year later, in January, Abul Hassan Bani Sadr was elected the first president of the Islamic Republic. His government began work on a major nationalization program for Iran. Oil exporting and other exports, like natural gas, chemical and petrochemical products, etc., have brought major revenue to Iran. After becoming global, Iran has changed from being a less economically developed country to a more economically developed country. Their GDP has also increased since becoming global. Additionally, their trade opportunities have widened, which means their economy will benefit from their increased resource exporting. Conflicts with Iranian traditions and religion have been a major con to globalization in Iran, and have generally been the main cause of conflicts within. Along with this, Iran has faced some neo-imperialism from countries like the UK and the US in the past. It is also a rentier state, which is considered a positive in the aspect that they have a lot of resources to export, but considered a negative since they depend mostly on that for their national revenue. Globalization has opened up trade for Iran, but has also introduced additional corruption to their economic system. Moreover, migrant labor is vital since the Afghan immigrants take the vital jobs that most of the Iranians wouldn't take. This directly affects the economy of Iran, hence the government can't deport migrants freely, since that would impact their economy. The most recent global event that Iran has participated in is the Iran nuclear deal. Also known as the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, or JCPOA, this deal was struck on 14 July 2015 between Iran and the 5 permanent members of the United Nations Security Council, that is, China, France, Russia, United Kingdom, the United States, plus Germany, and the European Union. This is the deal that initiated the external interaction between Iran and other countries once again, after their isolation. This means that in exchange for Iran abolishing their nuclear production plans, these mentioned countries would provide Iran with economic sanction relief. After opening up to globalization in 1980, Iran faced multiple problems with other countries trying to influence their traditions. These external parties also tried to take charge in Iran and make changes that conflicted with Iran's ideals. Even before officially opening up to globalization in 1980, Iran faced multiple conflicts with other countries that tried to interfere with their traditions and religion. For example, in 1941, the Iranian Shah's pro-Axis allegiance in the World War II led to the Anglo-Russian occupation of Iran and the deposition of the Shah in favor of his son, Mohammad Reza Pahlavi. As a result, the Pahlavi dynasty, 1925 to 78, was brought to an end because of a revolution that was caused by global interferences with Iran's traditions. This just shows how Iran is very set in its ways of traditions and religion when it comes to structuring their country. Additionally, in 1953, a coup was controlled by the British in order to overthrow the Iranian Prime Minister, Mossadegh. Later on, Iran was under the rule of Ayatollah Khomeini, and it began to support terrorism abroad. This resulted in them assisting groups such as Hamas and Hezbollah. It can be inferred that this was in some way a consequence of the 1953 coup. The US-Iranian relations were negatively affected when a group of Iranian students seized the US embassy in Tehran in November 1979 and held embassy personnel hostages until mid-January 1981, which resulted in the US cutting off their diplomatic relations with Iran in April 1980. Finally, in 1980 to 88, the Iran-Iraq War occurred, which spread to the Persian Gulf and resulted in the US Navy and Iranian military clashing. This also led to the designation of Iran as a state sponsor of terrorism, and is consequently subject to the US, UN, and EU economic sanctions. Hence, even though Iran became officially global in 1980, there were still global restrictions that were imposed on them due to the conflicts that were initiated by external countries that were trying to transform Iran's traditions and oppose their religion. Oil is an incredibly vital part of Iran's economy. It has been ever since the early 1900s, and can even be considered the cornerstone of their economic advancement. In 1973, Iran was the world's second largest oil exporter, second to Saudi Arabia. During this time, the Arab-Israeli War was going on from October 6th to 25th, so the oil prices were going up. This was a tough time for Iran, since not only were they going through war, but they were also facing a period of recession due to the rising prices of oil and reduction in exporting. This was a problem that Iran faced up until 1979. Even today, Iran is still one of the major oil exporters in the world, but due to multiple conflicts along the way, they have dropped in exporting importance. One of these conflicts was a coup d'etat in 1953 that was conducted by British and US intelligence agencies. This was the start of a new oil agreement, which was controlled by the British and US agencies either way, and hence led to Iran's reduction in profit from oil exporting. Even by the Islamic Revolution in 1978 to 79, Iran was only producing and exporting around 10.4% of the world's oil. Unfortunately, Iran's foreign trade GDP percentage decreased since 2012 due to the various trade sanctions that were imposed on them as a result of their support of terrorist groups. Iran can be considered a superpower when it comes to energy. Having been the leading oil supporter of the world for almost 80 years, oil was evidently their main source of national revenue. They produced and exported about 25 to 30 billion US dollars worth of oil in 2004, and exported around 1.5 million barrels of crude oil per day up until 2012. Iran has started investing more in this resource, which was supported by the NIOC, or National Iran Oil Company, in recent years, and Iran has started receiving direct foreign investment from other countries in their oil exporting, along with their natural gas exporting, car manufacturing, vehicle parts, and gold and jewelry. Iran's main export partners are Japan, South Korea, Turkey, India, China, and Italy. Tying back to my claim, globalization has been more negative than positive in Iran. This can be seen from the negative responses of other countries that Iran has had to deal with after making alliances with certain terrorist groups. This can also be observed through the various conflicts in Iran that have occurred due to other countries interfering with their set traditions and religious ways. Furthermore, even though Iran's oil exporting has benefited Iran a great deal more after globalization, it has also transformed Iran into a rentier country, which makes it quite dependent on the revenue from its exporting. This proves to be negative since Iran's economy could crash spectacularly if anything happens to their main source of national revenue.